listeners, we welcome you to another episode of The Resurgence. In this program today, we have none other than Right Rev.Thegu Mutahi, the moderator of the 23rd General Assembly of the PCEA. So we welcome you to the program, moderator, yes, so that we can discuss various issues that are pertaining to the ministry, the retired ministers and the retiring ministers, and the state of the church and the state of the country. Welcome to the program, moderator. And maybe in a nutshell, take some moment and tell us about the state of the church.
The state of the church is that, the church is now at 59 presbyteries, because we inaugurated 2 presbyteries this year. If you remember, there was Laikipia Presbytery, subdivided into Nyahururu and Lumuruti, so we no longer have Laikipia as a presbytery. Then, just before the GSC, Nairobi East Presbytery was subdivided into 2. That's New Nairobi East and Nairobi South Presbytery. Work is going on well in all the 3 countries. In Tanzania, in fact, this month I'll be going to Tanzania to dedicate a church up Mount Meru, a place called Urisho. Uganda, work is also progressing very well. We receive very good reports about the 4 regions. That is the Western Region, where the church initially went to a place called Shigumba. To the north, a place called Arua. We have also a lot of good work happening in Jinja, which is the eastern side, and also in the center, that is Kampala, Mukono. We are receiving very good reports about what our ministers are doing on the ground, of course supported by church elders, group leaders, full members, and the general membership. All our church groups are very functional, and every group is also progressing very, very well. We have very good programs for our children in church school, good programs for our youth. Sure, a lot of things are happening, but there's still a lot of ground to cover because of the challenges that are in the nation. Economic challenges are also touching the church. And but I commend our members, because we have places where we receive new members in big numbers. We wouldn't want to boast about receiving members from other churches, but once they come, then we can only receive them. So I would say generally that the church is well.
Okay,
Thank you.
We thank God, and we hear a lot of positive developments and growth of the church, and especially in terms of the presbyteries.
Yes.
But again, now that you have mentioned that in terms of the increase of the number of the presbyteries, do you foresee a situation whereby we may be forced, because of the numbers and the representational aspect in the meetings, a situation whereby we may have to change the structure of our meetings because of the many number of representatives that are coming to some of these committees?
Since we reduced the numbers after the restructuring of church groups, we haven't had a very big challenge of numbers. For instance, we had the GSC in April this year, and we were able to congregate in a hotel. Something we would not have done previously because of the numbers. Previously, we used to meet in school halls, big school halls, because of accommodation, and still we would still struggle to have those people accommodated there. So presently, I wouldn't say we have a very big challenge of numbers. But it's something that we need to look at because of the subdivisions. Numbers are definitely going to increase. But presently, the way the church was restructured in terms of church groups, the numbers that come for GSC, the numbers that come for General Assembly are still manageable. Yes.
But there are still some people who feel even at this moment that the restructuring was good at that time.
Yes.
But probably the church needs to rethink the issue of restructuring of the church groups. What is your opinion on that?
You know, they say that a good idea gives way for a better idea. It was a good idea then, although it's not very long ago that happened. But again, now we have felt the effects of not having the groups beyond the parish level.
Yes.
So it is time now, as we review the Constitution, we look up at that matter again, because we have felt, and I think it was good for us to go the way we went, so that we may realize what we were having by having group leaders in all our meetings. now I am sure when we are reviewing the constitution, which is now ongoing, we believe that towards the end of this year, towards the next year's General Assembly, the review will accommodate the views of the people who are saying, let the groups now be retained at all levels of the church.
Okay.
So it is work in progress.
Okay.
Yes.
No, that's good to hear.
Yes.
Now, we have this Resurgence program.
Yes.
And it's a program that interviews the retired ministers and those that are close to retirement, so that in terms of discussions with them, we get to know their experiences in the ministry and the journey towards retirement and how they prepared for the same. And also in their home setting, we get to understand their life after retirement, so that it can be a lesson to those of us that are still active in ministry and those that are preparing to retire, so that we can learn from them in one way or the other. So this is the essence of this particular program. So what do you think about the care of these retired ministers?
One, I must thank you, Dr. Karevi, for this innovation of thinking about retired ministers who have done their part in the church and are now retired, some for several years. And it happens sometimes they get neglected by us.
Yes.
Sorry to say that. So it was good of you to remember our treasures. I would say that previously, from what I gather, is that there wasn't any program for ministers when they retired. And that's why some had to work for many years beyond the retirement age, because there was nothing for them, particularly in terms of finances. But then over time, a church has developed a way to take care of the retired ministers, where we have a pension scheme, and therefore they retire, with a certain amount of money. And once they have received the lump sum, there is an annuity that they can receive in the course of their lifetime. That is a step, a very important step. I also remember we came up with a forum where we invite ministers who are about to retire in 5 years, and we invite people who can speak to them, and also we hear them speak and say what they think will happen in 5 years. So every year we invite ministers who will retire in 5 years, but also invite those who are retiring in a year's time, who may also have been invited 5 years before. And we have found that program also very good, because we also invite their spouses who come along with them, and we look for resource persons who speak to them, engage them, and the retired ministers also tell their story and what they are looking forward to. That's again a very good addition. I'm also glad that this year we had our first retired ministers conference that happened here, again bringing all the ministers, and it was a very good time together. Therefore, I would say the way it was is not the way it is now. There are some improvements that have been made, but of course we still can do better than that, because ministry is a very unique thing. Unlike other trades where you can say I've retired and go out of that place. If you are a teacher, you walk out of the classroom, you walk out of the school, you have retired. If you are working in a factory, you no longer go to the factory anymore. But a minister, even though retired, you are still in the church.
Oh, yes.
And it is not that you can't offer the services that previously you were offering. You are still able to offer them. Therefore, a retired minister need to be looked at a bit differently from any other worker. So I think we can do more. Of course, when a minister retires, we say that they are now under the charge of their presbyteries.
Yes.
So we still hope that their presbyteries engage them in fraternos. Like now we had a minister's fraternal in Arusha, Tanzania, and I was glad to see many of them. So we still can do better, but we are better off than we were some years back.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with you. And some of the things that we have heard from those retired ministers in our interactions with them as we were dealing with the season 1 of the Resurgence, some of them I can see they are being implemented one way or the other. And most of them are very happy that we had a fraternal for retired ministers.
Yes.
And so I feel the church should come up with something that, not just that, a way for the national church to be actively involved in their life after retirement. So thank you so much for those efforts.
Yes.
Now, the PCA and especially from the PCMF point of view, Presbyterian Church Men Fellowship has been accused of not doing enough to encourage men to be actively involved in the life of the church.
Yes.
And some of them feel that they have been let down by the church, especially not being allowed to partake Holy Communion before they formalize their weddings. What is your take on that? And it's a hot potato among the men.
It is. That question has arisen in every forum I've been for men.
Yes.
And for sure, it's an issue. I am not sure how we address it going forward, because I remember some years back, the petition was brought up to the General Assembly, and it was defeated. Because the argument was, why are you discriminating men? You allow the wives they married to partake Holy Communion after going through catechism. But then you lock out the men. Why are you mistreating the boy child, yet you are saying the boy child is discriminated out there?
Yes.
Therefore, I think it is still another time we need to revisit it and ask ourselves how well can we encourage these men who want to continue serving in the church, but because of one reason or the other, they have not been able to formalize their weddings in church. And sometimes it's not of their own making.
Yes.
Sometimes they have hostile in-laws, so to speak, who do not support them.
Yes.
When they go and say, and they want the blessings of the parents, of course, although they have lived with their wives for a number of years, they go to the parents and tell them, I want to have my wedding solemnized in church, give me your blessings. Demands come, and they are unable to meet them. And therefore, it was not of their own making. They would have wished to do their wedding in church. There are also some women, so we hear, who are married, and because they are partaking Holy Communion, themselves not cooperating. They tell the man, now that's up to you. Unless you are, I'm not in a hurry myself. And again, I want the wedding to be very colorful. We can't just do it in a short way. Yet in church, we tell the men, why don't you come and we do a simple wedding where we have only 5 of us, the minister who is celebrating, the couple and the witnesses. And some men have brought that, but when they go home, they face resistance.
Yes.
They are told by their wives, no, it can't be that way. It must be done in a colorful way. So, for sure, in some cases, men are victims.
Yes.
How do we help them? I know the church constitution says that if we have information that it is the wife who is resisting the church wedding, we can, prohibit her from taking Holy Communion. But again, these are domestic matters. You may not get full information.
Right.
And men sometimes are not very keen to say talk of their weaknesses. Therefore, I think this debate, as you have raised it here, this is the time we need to discuss it at the forums where it should be discussed. It ought maybe to be brought again to the General Assembly. And we ask ourselves, are we being fair to the boy child?
Yes.
What else can we do to bring the man into Holy Communion? Because we are losing men. We have fewer men in Holy Communion than we have women. Possibly that is one of the hindrances. So I agree this is a matter that needs to be discussed.
Yes. Yeah, that's very important. And I must tell you that from the ground, the men are not very happy.
They are not happy.
We as a church has to do something about it.
Yes.
Now, there has been a marked deviation by the youth today to move away from matters of the church. When you go to the churches, wherever you go, we have huge numbers of Sunday school kids, huge numbers of Boys and Girls Brigade kids. But you don't see the same being translated to the youth groups.
Yes.
The youth group is diminishing by the day. What do you think should be done to mitigate this kind of a crisis?
Indeed, it is a crisis, as you put it, because as you say, you go to a church and it is the moment to pray for children, you have a multitude of children.
Yes.
But then invite the youth, a handful, and some are even timid to come forward. So what's the challenge? We need to look at our programs and see how we can have the youth accommodated in church in a better way. For instance, if you sample among the ministers, among the elders, you'll find that we may not have very youthful people in that cadre. And possibly that does not send a very good message to the youth out there. This is not our place. Because sometimes you are in a place because you associate with it. If they are youthful ministers, if they are youthful elders, the youth out there would feel this is the place we want to go to. And even those youthful ministers and elders will be able to touch, to talk to the youth out there and tell them, come and we go to church. So we need to look at our ordinations.
Yes.
Because for sure, ordination for ministers can start as early as 25. Why don't we, though it's a call, why can't we have more ministers coming to serve at that age? Elders, again, we can have elders as early as 25 because, when those who go to train for theological formation go at age 25, and they are required to be ordained as elders. So we can ordain as early as 25, much as the Constitution talks about that, and I'm sure in the review of the Constitution that will be factored. So why can't we have more elders? Why can't the ministers deliberately and the elders deliberately make sure that they do some affirmative action when it comes to ordinations, when it comes to recruitment, that we almost close the door to anybody who is beyond a certain age, no, of course not doing it in a way that would look like we are discriminating them, but in order to bring on board young people. Again, I've had people talk ill of the youth services we have in church, saying, no, youth should be part of the main service, because that is the way it used to be. Maybe it worked well then, but I have seen places with youth services, if they are well managed, of course with the supervision of elders who are not bullish, I have seen more youth in church. I saw that when I was a parish minister in Kahawasukari, where we had a youth service, which we managed very well. There were youth, there were elders who were a bit youthful, and we had a youth evangelist, and very many youth came to church. So I would say that youth services, where it's possible, should be promoted, because the youth are able to have their own place where they feel like they belong. Because for sure, for every segment in society, there come a time when people feel like they want to board. There come a time, even if it's worship, there come a time like people want to feel like they are the same. Since you have served in the US, I'm sure you are aware that when you served there, Africans will feel better when they are congregating together than when they are in a congregation that is of mixed races. Therefore, even in our setup, when we have a service for the youth, provided it's well managed, I'm not saying that we do it carelessly and leave the youth on their own. I'm saying we have a youth service that is well managed. You have a full-time evangelist if it's affordable, and have programs that are friendly to the youth. I remember going with the youth of that parish to go mountaineering one Saturday, and many of them came. Of course, we would start with a Bible exposition, do a prayer, go up the mountain. They would be faster than me, but I would still try and catch up with them. Therefore, we need to look for programs that bring the youth into church, even as we maintain Christian values when they come to church. Otherwise, if we don't do that, what you have observed will continue, and it will have a very bad effect on us in the future. Yes.
Do you think somehow the youth was negatively affected by the restructuring in the church? Because when we were young people, you used to look forward to attend the national youth camps and the regional camps. Yes,
I think that's what we have observed, that much as we restructured the groups, and mainly the groups were restructured because of financial challenges.
Yeah, I know.
There's an aspect, a ministry aspect maybe that we ignored. And now that we are thinking about relooking at that policy, I guess we now need to say boldly that we can't afford to deny our youth interactions at even higher levels. We may deny other groups possibly, but for the youth, I think those youth camps, youth rallies were very, very important. And we know what they did. And even for the future relationships of our people. Yes, we can't close our eyes to that. So I think this is something we need to look at as we look at the review of the Constitution.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for addressing that in terms of the church.
Yes.
Now, what is your honest opinion on the state of the country today?
A very, very difficult question.
Yes.
Because we would say that our country is bleeding. And it's been bleeding because of politics. The issues, the challenges we have are not necessarily political, but the political issues take prominence. You know, who won the elections, who did not win, issues of opening servers, issues of who is defecting to which political party, associating with the party in power, supporting government so that you may have development. Those issues have a lot of prominence in the country, yet they are not the issues that really bedevil us. The issues that bedevil us could be economic. Because of the economic depression that we are facing, we know that people are not able to sustain their lives. We have so many unemployed people, again the youth, who are unemployed and they are out there. They can't raise their families. If their families, they can't feed them. We also have a challenge of our education. For instance, now we transited from the old system to CBC. Yet that has not gone on smoothly because the junior secondary school has not kicked off well. We do not have adequate teachers, adequate classes, adequate desks, adequate materials, so on and so forth. So that's another challenge that the country is facing. We also have a challenge of insecurity, particularly, you know, what has been happening in the North Rift in terms of banditry. And we also have attacks here and there. We have a challenge of lawlessness, I would say. That's why you have so many motor accidents, because of the kind of driving and the use of roads that are poorly used and designed. So we have very many challenges, but it looks like our concentration is in the politics. I wish we would sober up, but starting with our leaders, and say politics aside, it doesn't matter who becomes president, who has the most numbers in parliament and elsewhere, but what is aiding our people? What are we doing for our young people in the days ahead? What are we doing to our children who are in school, particularly those now in junior secondary school? Our farmers motivated. Our farmers are lamenting that they are farming, yet they are not getting any returns. That tells you why we have a drop, particularly in an area like coffee, where we used to grow, we used to harvest 100 tons of coffee. Now we only harvest about 1,000 because our farmers are demotivated. Maybe some of the youth who are in urban places would be in the rural areas doing a little farming. However, I think our greatest problem is our concentration with politics. I wish we as a church would show politicians that they are not the only people who matter.
Oh, yes.
There are other concerns in this nation. But politicians have taken us hostage, I would say, or politics, not politicians. Politics have taken us hostage. You see now, like when politicians come to our place of worship, we forget everything else and accord them a lot of time. They make false promises and we share them. So my take would be that we need now to refocus and talk more about the concerns that are in this country. I've listed just a few. If we talked about those, we have the national conversation about those matters and face politicians and tell them now politics is not now adding value to our lives. We need to talk about things that add value to our lives. I think that's the direction we need to go.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important. But do you think the close proximity between church and state today is a threat to the prophetic voice of the church?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
It can be, the proximity is not very good sometimes. But someone explained politics, or let's say governance, not necessarily politics, as a fire. If you are close to the fire, you'll be burnt. Again, if you go very far from the fire, you get caught. So we can't keep very far away from government because we need them to work with us in many areas. Like when we mention youth, they are in charge. When we mention farmers, they are in charge. When we mention professionals, they are in charge. So they need government. So we church leaders must be close to government. But on the other side, we need to be very careful. Because the moment politicians and us become one and the same, we are not able to correct what they may not be doing right. because we have become part of them. So we need to have some respectable distance, not very far, not very close. That's what I would observe.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let's move on to another topic, Shakahora,
Yes.
which seems like a corrective guilt on the institution of the church.
Yes.
And it's just one of the many examples of the product of the heretical teachings in the church today. Do you have, or are you aware of any examples of heretical teachings in the PCA church today?
Well, I wouldn't want to say, because
Yeah.
I guess the presbyters are checking what the ministers and elders are preaching down there.
Yeah.
But, well, this PCA is a big church. You
Yes.
never know what happens every other day. But I have had complaints of,
Yeah.
of people asking, now, what is this teaching?
Yeah.
And I'm glad when we went for our fraternity in Arusha, we said we need a theological panel that will keep its ear on the ground
Yes.
to listen to the complaints that are coming from presbyteries or from what we overhear. That there are some teachings that almost border to what Shakahora is. But of course we have not got to that level.
Yes.
But you know, they say a stitch in time saves 9.
Yes.
We could be heading to that direction if we are not careful. Yes. Yes. So I guess the best thing is to have a very robust, vibrant theological panel
Yes.
that sort of gives guidance, advises the courts, and particularly the General Assembly, that these are matters that you need to look at. Our members are being subjected to this teaching. How can we arrest it? Because we need to arrest some of these things, because they may start small, they may start as a bit, then become too overwhelming. So that's something we need to keep our eye on.
But there is one particular issue that is in the public domain,
Yes.
and has caused some controversies among the theologians in the church. The issue of the redemption of firstborns. And you as a theologian, what is your take on that? I know it's a tough question to ask because we all belong to you.
Yes, for sure, theologically, it's not something that has any basis. I'm sure I know it's there in the Old Testament, but then we are living in the times of fulfillment, when Christ our Lord came and paid the debts and paid them in full. Therefore, we cannot speak of everybody needs salvation. It's not just the firstborns or certain elements in society. If it's salvation, salvation is required by all. Therefore, you cannot segment a section and say this is the one that needs deliverance. This one needs redemption. The salvation that Jesus brought forth is salvation for all. Therefore, that is a misguided theology. When you take people through a program of redemption of firstborns, I heard in some places they even redeem the firstborn of animals. I think I hear in some places if you build a brick house, you have to redeem it. You know, I think all those things are not theological at all. And I guess those who do them are using it as a way of raising money.
Oh, yes.
Not necessarily because they have any theological basis. And we should be careful not to misread the congregation, because the congregation looks up at a teaching elder, the minister, as one who has gone to school, who has been ordained, and should give the right leadership and right teachings. So when you introduce something of that nature, they will rush to appreciate it, not because it is right, but because you are their teacher. So, for instance, that matter, we need to say no to it. Presbyterians need to be keen, and we hope it will be put to an end, so that it doesn't not mislead our members.
But do you think, in your own opinion, that we are leaning more on what is monetary at the expense of what is missiological?
You are right. You are right. I think one of the challenges we have is that sometimes we want to raise money for many reasons, for many factors, and in the course of doing so, when people are not contributing as fast and as much as we would want them to, we may devise ways of getting the money out of them. One of them is what we call selling fear, telling them that they may die or get unwell. or the converts tell them they will recover if they are unwell. But that is not right, because the ministry of Jesus Christ was not built on financial strength. It was built on redemption. I know church must learn on money, but we must teach people giving and teach them in a way that they embrace that giving without having to threaten them, without having to mislead them. So money, yes, we require it at all levels of the church. But again, let us realize we're also living in difficult financial times. Therefore, let us see what we can do with our budgets so that they are not so heavy that we have to keep on calling members to make this contribution, make that contribution, because that is what leads to the kind of teachings that we are talking about. Yes.
Now, another topic that maybe you want to delve into is the issue of the resurgence and the apparent resurgence of ATR, or African traditional religions, leaning activities in the church. For example, things like Kiama. What is your take on these ideas that are coming up?
Well, I would say that nothing is new, because even the early church was faced by such challenges. People would convert into Christian faith and then get back to old practices, still claiming to be Christians. And that's why when you read the New Testament, you find letters that are in the New Testament that address such matters. Of course, the first letter is the letter to the Galatians, where people were converted to Christianity, but then some teachers came and told them, no, much as you got converted, you need to practice the Jewish customs to become an ideal believer. And they took it and they started practicing those things. And Paul got the news and he was very upset. So he wrote the letter to the Galatians to caution them that once you get born again, you get into a Christian faith, you need not go back into a culture that you are in, because you have gotten into a new culture. Again, the letter to the Hebrews was written to Jewish Christians who had got into the Christian faith. But then some people were telling them, no, you need to go back to your Jewish customs so that you can become wholesome Christians. So the writer of the book of Hebrews is again writing to them to tell them, no, you are now in a superior faith that is above what you were practicing previously. Coming to the question of today, we know that our people were converted into Christianity from their original practices. And some of the practices have survived, and we thank God. There are others that could not live with the Christian faith. There are others that are just overtaken. Even if there was no Christian faith, even the society then was dynamic. It never kept customs for so many years. So there are some customs that fell by the roadside because of time. There are others that fell on the wayside because the Christian faith came. Therefore, I would urge our people not to be very keen to go back to the old ways, because no culture is static. The kind of things you are saying we should do may have been overtaken by the time by now, even if Christianity never came. I would say the Africans of the 20th century are not the Africans of the 16th century. And those of the 16th century are not the ones of the 10th century. So there are things that just get overtaken. That is one. Two, now we have a Christian faith. If anything does not line well with the Christian faith, we might as well not practice it anymore. For instance, when the missionaries came, at some point they taught against FGM. If you go into the Bible, you'll never see a place where FGM is
you just explain to the viewers what FGM is about.
Let me call it women's circumcision.
Yes.
As it was then, or female circumcision. If you go into the scriptures, you'll not find anywhere explicitly where women's circumcision is forbidden. Although it's never practiced, but it's not forbidden. However, the missionaries talked about the hygienic, the medical aspect of it. And they taught against it, and it was embraced that it was not necessary. Therefore, as I said, There are things that are not of this century. There are things that are not of the Christian faith. We should not have hangovers about the past. Because if you remember, those who are converted into the Christian faith, and I have very many examples, I may not have even time to list them. There are people who are deep into the African culture then. But then, they observed Christianity, and they got converted into Christianity and left the old ways. They were not forced. Christianity was not forced upon unto anybody. It is people who made a deliberate choice.
Yes.
If they forsook those things by choice, why do I want to go back to them? Yet those who knew their importance and their beauty and their significance abandoned them. What have I to do with them? Yet I have not been in them. I have lived this to this age, having not gone through those practices. Why would I want to go back into them again? Where would I start? Remembering again that our African society is not very literate in terms of what happened in the past. We have no records. So unless I start an innovation of what was happening, I'm not sure what was happening then. Let me be comfortable with what I'm sure of now,